So I'm going to go over the lesson we learned today about number line rounding to the hundreds, to the nearest hundreds. We used the number 487 in our math journals today. Sorry about the crazy hopping and bopping on the phone. I'm using my phone today. Anyway, so 487, we have drawn our number line, which is the first step in what we should do. The next thing we need to do is decide which two hundreds that 487 falls between. And of course, with 400, we know that that is the lower hundred that it falls to. And then what comes after that hundreds-wise should be 500. Okay? And so what I taught the kids too was to go ahead with this, because it's such a large area that we're rounding with, to go ahead and find the midpoint on their number line and label it. And we know that 450 would be the center of that particular number line. And then they are to simply just take the number line, decide if 487 comes from between 400 and 450, or if it comes between 450 and 500. And since it's an 8, I know that 8 is larger than 5, so 450 and 500 is where this one's going to fall. And so then I would take my pen, and I just kind of estimate here where it's going to land. We didn't like fill in to make a definite here. We just kind of estimated. So I would say maybe about here is where 487 is going to fall. And then we're to look at the number line and decide, is 487 closer to 500 or closer to 400? And in this particular case, 487 is closer to 500. So when we round that to the nearest hundred, it should round to 500. That's what we did with the number line. So that should be fairly easy, and you can see that in the video above as well. Now, when we did rounding using place value, we used the numbers, believe it was 183. I don't have my notebook at home with me right now. Was one of the numbers that we used. And we talked about where it would fall between. So the high number and the low number here. So the lower number, the lower hundred it would go to would be 100. And the higher hundred it could go to would be 200. Then we were to look at this is rounding using place value, so we're supposed to use the place value. We don't need the ones place in this, but we do need the tens place. So we're to look at the tens place since we're rounding to the nearest hundred. And if the tens place is 5 or more, we round to the higher of the hundreds. If the tens place is 4 or less, we round to the lower. Well, we know that 8 is more than 5, and so we're going to round to the higher number, which would make this round to 200. I also pulled a fast one on them and did a little bit of a tricky one for them, just so that they would kind of be accustomed to it and know what to do when they see it. I threw 97 at them and asked them to round it to the nearest hundred. The only thing that really tripped them up a good bit was when they were deciding the higher hundred and the lower hundred. Most of them were not aware that 0 would count as the lower hundred because, of course, we don't have anything to go to. So the only thing I really said, and I really said it to the afternoon class, was, you know, if you're going to count by hundreds, where do you start? And they were all like 0. I was like, that's true. That is exactly what you would do. You start with 0. So that's kind of where I sent them with that. So we would start with 0 since that's below 97. And the 100 that comes after 97 would be 100. And then again, we're going to look at the tens place. We have no hundreds in this number yet. So we're going to look at the tens place. And the tens tells us that it is higher than 5. Same rules. If it's higher than 5, we're going to round to the larger number. If it's lower than 4, we're going to round to the smaller number. And so in this case, this is 9, which is higher than 5, which would mean that this should round to 100. Whoop, sorry. And so a lot of what we've been talking about too is that the ones place then gets a 0. So it doesn't matter what's here, it's not affecting the tens place. So in both of these, and that's something we've talked about, is that this automatically changes to 0 when we're rounding to the nearest hundred. And then I did tell them that everything behind the hundreds place should be a 0. I had a couple of them trying up here to round to the 50, and I explained to them that was not a hundreds place. It wasn't a number we would count if we were counting by hundreds, and so we needed to make sure that we didn't use that as our answer. So they should know that everything that they get for an answer should have 2 zeros behind it, or just the 1 0, depending on where it lands. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope that the video that we watched today is also helpful in explaining homework to your child. Good night.